The first thing the alien soldiers noticed wasn't the blood or the burn marks on the human wreckage. It was the small figure crawling from the rubble, dragging a dislocated shoulder behind her, and laughing like she just heard a dirty joke. That laugh didn't belong in the aftermath of a massacre. It didn't belong in a war zone, surrounded by towering reptilian elites and plasma rifles. It didn't belong there at all, and that's what made it terrifying. Commander Vark stepped forward, armored boots thudding against the scorched metal floor of the hangar. He loomed over her, all 9 feet of scaled arrogance, and squinted down at the bruised, tiny creature kneeling before him. She barely looked like a soldier. She looked like a dropout from a human street gang. No armor. No weapons. Just a half-torn flight suit, a busted lip, and a grin far too wide for someone covered in ash and grief. He sneered at her with all the condescension his species could muster. "This is the human they feared? This?" He barked a laugh to his officers. "I've seen sturdier prey in the Hydra farms. What's this one gonna do? Bite me?" She glanced up at him with an unreadable look, the kind of expression that shifts slightly each time you blink, half smirk, half scorn, half something else entirely. Her face was calm, but her eyes were pure calculation. Then she said, in the most casual tone possible, "You should really check my arm before you say anything dumber." Vark blinked. Then, out of bored curiosity or mockery, probably both, he grabbed her by the wrist and yanked it up. Her forearm was bloodied, but the tattoo was unmistakable. A black sigil wrapped around the inside of her forearm, etched in ink so dark it looked alive. Alien officers froze where they stood. The laughter stopped like someone had hit mute on the entire hangar. Vark's grip loosened, and his nostrils flared. The symbol was a code, a military designation that only a handful of elite intelligence units understood. And Vark was unfortunately one of them. That symbol was not just forbidden, it was terrifying. It was the mark of Echolac. A human ghost unit that operated under complete silence, complete deniability, and complete autonomy. Trained to infiltrate, dismantle, and erase targets without ever being seen. It was said that those who bore the tattoo didn't exist until you were already dead. She wrenched her arm free, rolled her shoulder with a pop, and smiled up at him like they were old friends about to play poker. "So," she said casually, "who's the funny one now?" Vark didn't answer. Couldn't. The silence in the hangar was so thick you could have sliced it with a vibroblade. She stood slowly, wincing slightly as her bones realigned. Even then, she didn't tower. She barely reached his chest. But now she was no longer small, she was looming. 2 guards stepped forward to restrain her. She didn't fight them. She let them chain her hands behind her back and march her through the ship like she was heading to brunch. Her calm was louder than any alarm. Her silence was a countdown they couldn't hear. By the time they threw her into the interrogation chamber, the entire crew was buzzing with unease. Officers whispered. Guards checked their weapons twice. Vark stared at the security footage, rewatching her expression the moment he saw the tattoo. He'd mocked her size. Now he was trying to calculate how long they had before she turned that smile into a massacre. The interrogation room was cold, metallic, and pulsing with dull blue lights. She sat chained to the center floor, hands folded, ankles locked to the magnetic base. Vark entered with 4 elite guards, each one armored, each one with plasma blades unsheathed. He circled her like a hawk, unsure if the mouse on the floor was actually a snake. "You are registered as deceased," he said. "No record of movement in 2 years. No transmissions. No sightings. No activity. You're not supposed to exist." She shrugged. "Most of your intel's outdated. It's embarrassing, really. Who sent you?" "No one." "What are you doing here?" "Vibing." He slammed his fist onto the table in front of her, denting the reinforced metal. Her eyes flicked to the dent, unimpressed. "You're on a warship surrounded by 50,000 trained soldiers." "And yet," she replied, nodding at the growing stress veins in his forehead, "you're the one yelling." One of the guards shifted, uneasy. Another kept glancing toward the exit. Vark's eyes narrowed. He motioned toward the table. Scan her. Again. Full spectrum. The technician complied, holding a scanning orb above her head. The results appeared instantly on the screen, several cybernetic nodes, mostly dormant. But one blinked, active. The tech frowned. She's emitting a low-frequency pulse. Non-lethal. Possibly a beacon. Vark turned slowly toward her. What did you do? She smirked. You ever see a Trojan horse? Vark's face turned pale under his scales. He lunged for the console, slamming the kill switch on outbound signals. But it was too late. The screen flashed red, connection completed. Somewhere in deep space, a ship had just received her ping. You fools, Vark muttered. She wasn't captured. She let herself in. The guard stepped back instinctively. One even raised his weapon, unsure whether to point it at her or at the walls. The ship's lights flickered. Doors sealed shut. Vark's comms unit crackled to life with a voice from the bridge. Commander, we've detected an inbound signature. Black. Cloaked. Massive. She leaned forward in her chair, testing the strength of the chains. They didn't budge. But the way she smiled told him that didn't matter. You ever read the old human myths? She asked. We had this one about a demon who walked into a palace smiling. The king laughed. Then the demon ate everyone and left the throne as a souvenir. Vark took a slow step back. His mouth moved, but no words came out. I'm not here to escape, she said, voice low. I'm here to watch your empire die, up close. Then she looked straight into the security cam, knowing damn well the entire bridge crew was watching. And she winked. The war room reeked of panic masked under protocol. Commander Vark paced like a caged animal, his claws clacking against the cold obsidian floor. Massive screens lined the chamber, flashing with data streams, location alerts, security feeds, and one persistent anomaly: her. The human. The so-called prisoner, now chained inside their interrogation vault, calmly sitting cross-legged, humming a tune that made no sense to any translator software. The bridge crew was running emergency decrypts, sweeping for sabotage, and still, she hummed. A full council of strategic officers sat stiffly around the table, their scaled skin glistening under the stress heat. Vark turned to them, slamming his claws onto the edge of the console. I want a full confirmation, now. That mark. That sigil. Could it be faked? One of the elder tacticians, an old reptilian with dark eyes and half a jaw replaced by chrome, spoke without looking up. No. That code is locked into a biosync frequency. Echolac tattoos are designed to degrade and kill their host if tampered with. You don't get one unless you're part of their shadow division. And if she has it, she isn't alone. The silence that followed was heavier than the bulkhead doors. Another officer dared to interject. But she's small. Fragile. Her bone structure is inconsistent with combat-level humans. Perhaps she's just a symbol, bait, used to trigger a psychological breakdown in our ranks. Vark slammed his fist into the hollow table, fracturing the projection. She didn't break. She walked through our sensors. Through our ranks. And she turned my interrogation chamber into a broadcast relay. Do you think that's bait? No. That's a scalpel. Precise. Silent. And now we're bleeding from the inside. On the main screen, they watched her again, in that sterile room. Still smiling. Still relaxed. But now tapping one finger against the floor, rhythmic. A pattern. It wasn't Morse. It wasn't code they knew. But they were certain it meant something. Something timed. The oldest tactical officer stood up slowly, resting his claws on the edge of the table. There is a reason the Council marked Echolac with the term Tier 0 threat. They don't engage like other humans. They don't wear uniforms. They don't ask questions. If one shows up, it's because a quiet war is already underway. And we've just been volunteered as the first casualty. Vark swallowed his rage. He hated fear. It made his blood feel cold. But he couldn't shake the image of her smile. like she already knew how this would end. He ordered the council dismissed and summoned his elite squad, Talon Group 7. 5 of the most brutal specialists in the fleet. Their task was simple: extract everything from her. No civility. No protocols. No hesitation. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, she had stopped humming. She sat perfectly still, breathing slowly, watching the subtle change in room temperature as the ceiling vents adjusted. Her training told her what was coming. High-grade interrogation agents. Not the commander. Not questions. No more games. The door hissed open. 5 figures entered, each one designed to break different things: muscle, bone, memory, will. One of them carried a neural lash. Another, a toxin injector. She didn't blink. Didn't twitch. She simply said, "Took you long enough. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." The lead interrogator didn't speak. He activated a neurofeedback scanner and placed it against her temple. It beeped, then sparked. Fried in under 2 seconds. He frowned. Tried again. Same result. She tilted her head. "Sorry. My head's already full of voices. You'll have to wait in line." They moved in. 2 grabbed her arms, another braced her head. But before they could inject her, the lights flickered, then shifted hue, just slightly. A half shade bluer than before. They froze. She looked up at the ceiling, smiled, and whispered, "Right on time." The ship shuddered. Not a full impact, more like a tug from outside reality. Something had entered their space. Something massive. The guards turned to each other, confused. One reached for his communicator. No signal. The internal security feeds glitched, then displayed static. She used the moment. Her hands, still chained, twisted at an impossible angle, bones popping out of socket. She grunted once, twisted again, and the cuffs snapped loose. Before the guards could react, she was behind one of them, using the broken cuff chain as a garrote. 2 went down in seconds. One tried to stab her, missed. She grabbed his weapon, reversed it, and jabbed it directly into his chest plate's weak seam. The 5th tried to flee. She didn't chase. She simply activated the toxin injector still on the table and lobbed it at his retreating back. It hissed. He collapsed. Vark was watching from the bridge. He saw everything. And still couldn't believe it. 5 elite guards down in 37 seconds by a prisoner with no armor, no formal weapons, and a dislocated shoulder. Worse, she didn't run. She walked to the camera. Looked straight at it. "You're not ready for what's coming," she said. "But don't feel bad. No one ever is." Then she walked to the exit, placed a stolen keycard on the lock, and waited. Behind her, the screens blinked again. This time they showed something new, an image from deep space. A Juggernaut-class vessel, unregistered, cloaked until moments ago, now fully visible. Its hull shimmered with old human alloy, scavenged alien armor, and heat shielding like nothing in Vark's records. It wasn't broadcasting any messages. It wasn't answering hails. But it was close. Too close. Vark's bridge crew was in disarray. Weapon systems were still charging. The defense grid was trying to realign after the internal security glitch. Comms were cut. Shields were unstable. And every sensor they had screamed the same thing: they were outgunned, outmatched, and out of time. In the chaos, Vark found his eyes drawn back to the camera feed. She was gone. Just an empty room and 5 bodies. Then, a flicker, just a frame. A message burned into the wall with plasma. 3 words. "You called me." Vark backed away from the screen. "Seal the command bridge. Activate failsafe lockdown. Prepare a full orbital burn." His second-in-command hesitated. "Commander, that will kill everyone still outside." "I said seal it," Vark shouted. "We are not losing this ship." But he already had. The ship wasn't under siege. It was already hers. The ship went silent in a way that wasn't mechanical. It was the kind of silence that creeps under your skin, like an animal realizing it's already inside a predator's shadow. The lights pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Red replaced blue. Vark watched the huge shift from the bridge and knew immediately it wasn't a system error. It was her. Every step she took seemed to echo louder than it should have in the corridor, and yet there was no audio on the internal feeds. She had wiped sound. The surveillance showed her moving, but no footsteps, no door hisses, no alerts. She had turned their ship into a tomb, and she was walking through it like it belonged to her. Vark ordered immediate contact with engineering. No response. He switched to the secondary deck security. No signal. Every time he tried to activate internal defenses, the system threw back the same error: authority denied. His own ship no longer recognized his command codes. A tech officer behind him whispered a phrase that no one dared to say out loud: echo override. Only a Black Division operative could implant one. And if she had, it meant the ship was operating under her embedded protocols, not theirs. Talon Group 7 was gone. 5 corpses and 1 missing body. The one she had garroted had vanished, leaving only his weapon behind. She didn't just kill them. She took what she needed: tools, gear, maybe genetic scans. Everything she touched stopped being useful to them. Vark's tail twitched with rage, but underneath it, fear festered like acid through armor. They were not trained for this. This wasn't an enemy they could shoot. This was infestation. Infiltration. She hadn't boarded the ship. She'd been absorbed into it. Worse, she was reshaping it. She didn't go for the weapons vault. She didn't charge the bridge. She moved downward, into the zero-gravity maintenance core. It was narrow, disorienting, and filled with tangled coils of coolant lines and exposed fusion regulators. No sane person would navigate it unless they had a death wish. But she moved through it like it was home, floating weightless, using fingertip momentum to slip between beams and cables. She dislocated her shoulder again to slide through a broken conduit shaft, gritting her teeth against the pain, and calmly realigned it once through. Her breath was steady. Her hands knew what to reach for. 3 tech crew tried to stop her near the gravitic chamber. She didn't use a weapon. She used the environment. One spark, a disabled panel, and a magnetic surge slammed all 3 against the wall like rag dolls. She took their gear and kept moving. The cruiser trembled again as her signal synced with deeper systems, environmental controls, deck gravity, drone pathways. She wasn't breaking the ship. She was remapping it. By the time Vark sent squads to intercept her, she had already cut off every stairwell, rerouted every lift, and vented every accessible hallway into vacuum. He watched helplessly as guards floated into nothing, screaming silently through the broken seals before the emergency blast doors shut behind them. One squad sent through a lower cargo access point triggered an autolock. When they cut their way out, they discovered they'd been sealed inside the trash compactor system. Not a single trace of her there. Just a message scrawled in coolant fluid on the inner hatch: "Nice try." On the bridge, an officer ran a last-ditch bioscan. She was still showing on the ship's network. Her heart rate was steady. Too steady. Lower than a sleeping crew member. She wasn't in a rush. She wasn't panicking. She was pacing herself. A methodical crawl through their innards, like she was tuning the ship for a performance. Vark spun around and demanded answers. Who was she? What was she really capable of? That's when one of the junior officers, a data archivist, finally cracked a suppressed file from the Galactic Watch logs. It wasn't intelligence. They hadn't classified it that way. It was a warning. An incident from 2 years ago. A rebel uprising in a Terran-mined starfield had gone silent after a single Echo Black operative was deployed. There were no survivors. The entire moon base disappeared from orbit. When probes found the site, it was a crater. One side of the crater wall had a symbol burned into the rock, the same one on her arm. She wasn't a soldier. She was an extinction event. Inside the core of the ship, she found the relay hub, the heartbeat of the command structure. With quiet fingers and a stolen encryption wand, she began writing her own override strings into the NAV core. Every second she typed, the bridge grew more unstable. Vark saw the navigation map flash, shift, stutter, until it started charting new coordinates. Not escape routes. Not Terran strongholds. She was pointing the ship toward one thing only, an ancient signal, deep within an unclaimed sector. One that pulsed in a rhythm eerily similar to the one she had been tapping in her cell. The bridge crews started fracturing. Some demanded surrender. Others suggested abandoning ship. One officer pulled a weapon on Vark and was immediately shot by another. The panic was contagious. But no one dared to send more troops after her. The last squad had their feed cut off mid-scream, followed by the doors sealing behind them. Every attempt to override was denied by the new security corps. She had rewritten herself into the ship's hierarchy: commander, unknown human. Still, she wasn't done. She climbed out of the core chamber and entered the observatory shaft, a circular dome overlooking deep space. She sat there in silence, watching stars drift past as the ship reoriented itself. From there, she uploaded one final packet, a data burst aimed directly at her juggernaut cruiser. It confirmed one thing: the job was complete. The cruiser, still parked outside the alien vessel, began to move. Vark watched its silhouette shift and vanish. Not cloaking. Disappearing. A type of jump tech no one on his ship had ever seen. They were now blind. Alone. Cut off. And she was still inside. The lights dimmed once more. Then, one by one, they returned, not the sterile white of alien architecture, but soft, warm, yellow light. Human light. The kind found in bunkers and battlefield tents. The change was symbolic, psychological, and effective. Everyone on board felt it. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was home. Outside the mothership, the juggernaut vessel had returned, not with blaring weapons or shields raised, but with absolute silence, hovering just beyond the reach of the alien cruiser's scanners like a dark star that had chosen to park itself near something less fortunate. Its surface was jagged, brutalist, made of blended Terran alloys and scavenged plates from fallen enemy fleets. It looked more like a broken asteroid than a warship. But inside, it hummed with terrifying precision. No insignia. No name. Only one constant signature pulsing from it like a heartbeat, her identity code. The ship wasn't her backup. It was her ride. Vark stared at the hovering beast through the reinforced glass of the command bridge, fists clenched. The ship had no registration in any known galactic database. No records. No logs. It didn't even exist in sensor memory until it wanted to. One moment, empty space. The next, a war machine coasting on its own gravitational pull. The fact that it had returned only confirmed what Vark feared most. This wasn't an escape plan. This was Stage 2. He tried issuing a fleet-wide transmission, calling in reinforcements from nearby warposts. The command channel returned an error. Then another. Then a new message scrolled across every bridge terminal in a slow, patient pulse. It simply read, "There is no fleet." Vark's throat tightened. She had cut them off not just from their systems, but from the network grid itself. They weren't alone because she was inside. They were alone because she had made sure no one else could find them. In the maintenance levels below, she walked calmly now, no longer hiding her steps. The ship wasn't resisting her anymore. It was recognizing her. Doors opened without prompts. Lights adjusted to her movement. Surveillance systems that once tracked her now watched passively. The remaining guards she passed didn't raise their weapons. They looked at her, then at each other, and stood down. Not out of loyalty. Out of something worse. Surrender. The kind that settles deep when you've seen enough to realize you're not facing a soldier, you're witnessing history in motion, and you just want to survive long enough to tell someone. She stepped into the forward launch bay, where escape pods were docked and silent. She didn't need them. What she needed was at the far end of the bay, the primary broadcast array. A high-power comm dish strong enough to beam across systems in seconds. But she didn't use it for comms. She reprogrammed it. She realigned it. She turned it inward. Then she smiled. On the bridge, Vark felt the shift before it showed up on the screens. The navigation course had changed again. The ship was no longer coasting. It was now moving, slowly, deliberately, toward a system they weren't even supposed to know about. Uncharted. Redacted. The signal she had been tapping out this whole time had become coordinates, and now they were locked in. Vark snapped. He drew his sidearm and ordered his remaining bridge crew to seize control of the core systems. No one moved. Not even his second-in-command. They all looked at him with the same expression she had worn in the cell, calm detachment, like the outcome had already been written, and they were just waiting for him to accept it. He stormed down from the bridge himself, swiping his command clearance at every door, overriding security locks one by one until he reached the launch bay. She was still standing there, arms folded, staring at the blinking tower of the broadcast array. He leveled his weapon at her back. She didn't flinch. She didn't even turn around. "You made a mistake," Vark growled. "You underestimated what I'm willing to do to save this ship." Finally she turned. And the look on her face made something ancient curl in his stomach. Not fear. Not even arrogance. It was serenity. The kind that said she didn't need to win anymore, because she already had. "You think this is about the ship," she said. "It's not." He tightened his grip on the weapon. "Then what is it about?" She nodded toward the array. "It's about what happens next." The dish clicked into place. The ship's artificial gravity shivered. Something beneath them powered up with a hum that sounded deeper than noise, more like a thought. She reached behind her and pulled out something she'd taken from engineering, a modified control node. It blinked 3 times. Then a wave pulsed outward from the array, invisible, undetectable to anyone except those trained to feel its echo. Vark's weapon dropped an inch. He didn't understand what she'd done, but he felt the change. She stepped forward. "Every ship in your fleet is now broadcasting a backdoor signal to Echolac receivers. It's dormant. Quiet. For now. But when we flip the switch, your entire empire's communications, targeting systems, and fleet positioning becomes our map. Your war becomes our puzzle. And we're very good at solving puzzles." Vark lunged. She moved first. He never even got to fire. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted until the bone cracked, then kicked him backward into the launch ramp controls. The blast door behind him opened automatically, and he barely caught himself on the edge. She stood over him as the vacuum howled behind her. "You mocked me when I was in chains," she said, looking down. "Now look at you." He scrambled, fingers slipping. She knelt just out of reach. "We're not the strongest. Not the biggest. Not even the most advanced," she said. "But we are the ones who adapt. And when you adapt long enough, you stop following the rules. You start writing them." Then she reached out, not to help, but to press the release latch beside him. He screamed. The vacuum took him. The doors sealed. She stood in silence, letting the noise fade. Then she walked to the launch bay's master console and tapped a single key. Across the ship, systems reset. Power rerouted. Weapons locked down. Navigation course confirmed. The cruiser was hers now, fully. Above, on the Juggernaut vessel, lights flickered to life, responding to her signal. It began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, until a wormhole pulse opened before it, swallowing it in an instant. The mothership would follow soon. She stared at the stars one last time through the viewport, then whispered something no one heard. History had changed hands. And she wasn't finished yet. The ship drifted through deep space now like a myth set in motion. Inside, the systems that once hummed with cold precision now responded to a new rhythm, a silent pulse guided by her will. The echo of conflict had faded into eerie calm, the kind that left even the bravest soldiers unwilling to breathe too loudly. No alarms rang, no orders barked through the intercom. Only the low hum of a vessel that no longer belonged to its creators. She stood at the bridge now, the highest seat of power, watching the view beyond the glass as stars curved around their trajectory. She had plotted a course into the black, to a place unmarked on any map the aliens possessed, a place the Echolac division called simply the Vault. Crew members who hadn't fled or died now moved with quiet reverence. No one challenged her presence. No one dared. Some tried to rationalize it as survival instinct, others as forced loyalty, but none could deny the truth staring them in the face. The ship wasn't stolen. It had been claimed. And they were now passengers on something far larger than a battle. This wasn't a tactical win. It was a warning sent across the void, a message written in seized steel and rewritten code. She issued no orders. She didn't need to. The systems responded to her touch like she had lived in their circuitry for years. In many ways, she had. Echolac didn't train operatives just to infiltrate enemy lines. They trained them to become ghosts inside the machines of war, to move unnoticed through layers of power and turn weapons into messages. And now that message was ready to be delivered. Her juggernaut cruiser reappeared ahead of them, phasing in with a silent pulse of gravitational distortion. The ship's presence alone caused a tremble across the alien cruiser's sensor arrays. It didn't fire. It didn't need to. Its existence confirmed everything she'd promised. There was more coming. And what came next wouldn't be a single operator. She stepped to the center of the bridge and activated the ship-wide channel. No sirens. No dramatic music. Just her voice, calm and deliberate, echoing through every hallway, chamber, and vent system across the mothership. To those of you still alive, congratulations, she began, her tone casual but razor-sharp. You were part of something historic. You survived a Black Division operation. That's rare. Don't ruin it by being stupid. Every technician, soldier, and officer froze as her words spilled through the ship's veins. You've been cut off from your fleet. Not because we fear retaliation. Because we already disarmed your war net. You just don't know it yet. Every ship you've built runs code we now understand. Every protocol you rely on was reverse-engineered the second I entered this ship. And every planet you've taken, we've marked. You see stars. We see targets. She paused then, letting it settle. This ship is going to the vault. If you cooperate, you'll live long enough to be handed off for interrogation. If not, you'll be spaced. That's not a threat. It's just math. The channel closed. Silence followed. Some officers wept in private. Others simply sat down, defeated. No resistance formed. No uprising tried. Not even the bravest warriors had the will to fight someone who never raised her voice to win. She turned back toward the navigation console, double-checking their trajectory. The vault was a location hidden between starfolds, a dimensional slit where stolen tech, enemy plans, and galactic war blueprints were dumped by Echolac agents. She wasn't just bringing the ship there for debrief. She was bringing proof. Of capability. Of superiority. And most importantly, of timing. Because timing was what made this operation so much more than a strike. It was a signal. She tapped the console again, opening a hidden subroutine only accessible through her biometrics. A second screen lit up beside her, dozens of Echolac symbols flashing silently. Operators, teams, squads. All synced. Already? The signals she had launched through the relay array earlier had already reached them. They weren't just watching. They were moving. Infiltrations had begun across the galaxy. Her message was already unpacked. She closed the feed and stood quietly, her hands folded behind her back as the bridge dimmed around her. Not out of power, but by design. The ship responded to her heartbeat now. A calm signal. Not aggressive. Not panicked. But methodical. The language of inevitability. Far below, in the observation deck that overlooked the starboard edge of the cruiser, a lone alien technician stared through the viewport at the juggernaut ship keeping pace beside them. He whispered to himself in disbelief, repeating what one of the old bridge officers had said in passing. That she hadn't been captured. She had delivered herself. A perfect ghost walk. A reverse incursion. Not a prisoner, an anchor. The lights above flickered once more, and then a low tone began to hum throughout the ship, her voice once again, but this time part of the ship's heartbeat. A final message, recorded and embedded into the system like a monument. You laughed when I walked in chains. You joked about my size. You thought silence meant weakness. But silence, Commander Vark, is just a moment before the detonation. Then the voice cut out. The silence that followed was louder than any speech. The vault came into view, hidden within the folds of space like a scar in time. Dozens of ships already hovered there, dark, quiet, powerful. She smiled. Not because of the victory. But because this wasn't the victory. This was the setup. The alien empire hadn't just been exposed to Echolac. They'd been inducted into a new phase of warfare, one where humans didn't knock on the front door. They rewired the house from the inside. She stepped off the bridge and walked alone down the corridor, past frozen stairs and silent crews. Her pace never changed. Her hands never trembled. And on her forearm, the tattoo still burned with black ink, as alive as the legend it had become. Behind her, the bridge's main screen displayed the final auto-broadcast she had embedded into the alien ship's communication systems. A hologram of her face appeared across enemy fleets within range, speaking 3 final words that no translator failed to interpret. We are coming.